Kevin, if you're happy to sit down, what we'll do is, as we're doing housekeeping things at the beginning, hopefully Marvin will be here before we get to the business proper. Okay, well, first of all, can I welcome everybody to today's West of England Combined Authority Committee, including those viewing online, and I hope you can hear me because I know there have been issues about this at one or two of our meetings, so I hope it's working properly today. And I'm Dan Norris from the West of England Combined Authority, for those of you who don't know me. And if I could just quickly introduce the committee colleagues that I have here present. First of all, Kevin Guy from Bath and North East Somerset Council. And also sat next to Kevin, Toby Savage from South Gloucestershire Council. And Marvin Rees from Bristol City Council is on his way, and hopefully he'll be joining us very soon. Can I also welcome Richard Bonner, who is from the Local Enterprise Partnership, sat to my left. Hold your hand up so we all know who you are, Richard, please. And he's a non-voting member of the committee. He's very welcome, of course. Before we move on to the main agenda items, I'd just like to mention that some members of the public are joining this meeting to present their statements. Please note that all the statements received have been circulated and read by committee members and are also available to view on the Combined Authorities website. So the next item is item 2, apologies for absence. I'm not aware of any apologies. Anybody aware of any? In that case, we'll move on to item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any interests of the members present that they wish to declare, please? Toby. Thank you very much, Toby, for making that so crystal clear. Kevin, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that as well. Okay, we better make sure when Marvin comes that we need to go back to that. Is that right, Stephen? Just to give him an opportunity to comment on that. Stephen? Sorry, you're looking at something else. When Marvin arrives, we probably need to ask him if he's got any declarations, don't we? Because he may have the same situation, of course. Okay, well, in that case, I'll make sure I go back to that item when Marvin arrives. We now move on to item 4, minutes of the previous meetings. The minutes of the previous meeting held on the 8th of April of this year have been circulated with the meeting papers. Are members present happy to confirm that these minutes are a correct record of that meeting, please? Thank you very much, both Kevin and Toby. Appreciate that. The next item is item 6, Chair's announcements, which I have none. Item 6 now is items from the public, which is up to 30 minutes. First of all, questions. There are 5 questions that have been submitted for this meeting today, and as usual, details have been circulated and written answers have been sent to the questioners, and these are published on the Combined Authority website alongside the agenda papers for those who are interested. And then moving on to statements, we've received 11 statements, and as I mentioned before, we have made arrangements for some members of the public to join this meeting to present their statements where they have requested to do this, and up to 3 minutes per statement will be permitted today, and I'd be grateful if I think it's an individual, I think one person's giving statements today, could summarise your points within 3 minutes. We have read all the statements, which are also published on the West of England Combined Authority website. I take it you're Claire?
I am, yes.
Right, so this is Councillor Claire Young, and is that Iron Acton your ward, Claire?
Sorry?
Where's your ward?
Frampton Cotterell.
Frampton Cotterell, beg your pardon.
Which includes Iron Acton among many other communities. Okay. So, given the limited time, I'll take my comments on the Ulverston Hill Cycleway and Yates Spur as read, and simply urge you to support those schemes this afternoon and bear in mind future opportunities to expand the network, such as the Frog Lane, Colliery, Dramway route. I want to focus my remarks today on the issues with the buses, the lack of reliability, the lack of services for some areas that are leading to isolation, and the need for fair pricing. In recent months, this has been one of the hottest topics in my inbox, And in all my years of standing in town centres with petitions, I cannot remember one where I've had so many people signing up to queuing up to sign it. I understand the signatures have not been attached to the papers for data protection reasons, which is entirely understandable, but I can tell you that there were well over 700 signatures at the time of submission, and we're still collecting them. After the disruption of the lockdowns and with fuel prices soaring, we have a real opportunity now to convince people that there are better ways of getting around than always going by car. The problem is that when people look at trying the bus, the services aren't available to go where they want to go, when they want to go, or if they are, they find them unreliable. Too many people are telling us they've tried it, it didn't work, never again. As a bus user myself, I feel their pain. Only last night I found myself trudging 2 miles home in the rain, laden down with luggage, after the Y1 was cancelled. But that is nothing to some of the stories we hear. Young employees at Cribbs Causeway finding 3 buses in a row cancelled and having to call a parent to collect them. People unable to get to medical appointments or work. NHS staff unable to get to and from hospital. Students continually late for school or college due to cancellations. And people having to call taxis they can't afford after being left stranded. If we're to grasp the chance to make a big change now, we need to be thinking in a radical way, not tinkering around the edges. I thank the West of England Mayor for meeting some of my colleagues earlier this week when I was away. We are really keen to work with you on creative solutions. A network of express services on key routes between hubs, with frequent smaller buses feeding in from the surrounding areas. Demand responsive transport for those areas that struggle to sustain a regular service. Through ticketing, so you're not penalised for having to change bus and to make using the bus simpler. A commitment from operators that they will not cancel the same subsidised service 2 or more times in a row. Let's think more creatively about these problems and find a solution so that using the bus becomes an option for many more people, for many more journeys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. I don't know if you want to have another 30 seconds or a minute, because I'm aware that Marvin came in and I'm distracted from what people might have heard what you're saying. Is there anything you want to add? I'll give you a bit more time.
Sorry, I'm struggling to hear. I'm terribly sorry. What is,
did you want to say anything else as you were speaking?
Oh, right. Whereabouts did I was concentrating on what I was saying and not on people walking in, sorry. No, I think I've hopefully covered all the points. I mean, I was just going through the sort of different solutions you might have, and things like demand responsive transport and through ticketing and all these other issues, which I know you discussed some of those earlier this week with my colleagues, and I'd certainly like to have further conversations. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Claire. That's great. Okay, well, is there anybody else who wishes to make a statement that's present here today? I've got a long list of people who submitted statements, but I'm not aware of who's here. I'll just run through the names just in case they're here. I know Dave Redwell isn't around. Jeffrey Allen, Brendan Taylor, Jonathan Mayhem, Nigel Shipley, Tim Weeks, Elaine Ashley, Mike Birkin, Louise Branch, Ian Watkins. I assume none of those people are here, and I haven't been unfair to anybody by not calling them. Okay, thank you very, very much indeed to all those who've submitted statements today. All those comments that have been made and submitted have been noted where they relate to agenda items and will be taken into account by the committee today. Okay, thank you. Before we move to the next item, item 7, welcome Marvin. This is Marvin Rees, Mayor of Bristol City Council, who's here today. Marvin, we went through the business items at the beginning before we got to the proper items while we waited for you to come. What I just wanted to check was, do you have any declarations of interest to declare, please?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Dan.
Thanks very much indeed, Marvin. Right. Then in that case, let's move to item 7. Please can I ask Richard Bonner from the Local Enterprise Partnership Board to speak now, please. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. As always, we are thankful for having the opportunity to engage in this public discussion. I wanted to raise a number of points to items that we'll find on the agenda. If I start first with the matter of the investment funds. Of course, we know that we continue to face a period of significant uncertainty in the addition to the issues surrounding ongoing impacts of COVID, what's happening in Ukraine, and of course, we note that inflation is having a significant impact. And we've observed that in a number of the plans and proposals, there are delays, and of course a number of those are impacted by those external factors. And we recognise, however, that we have got to work together across this system to try and ensure that we continue to follow through, provide the flexibilities that are needed to ensure that the benefits are brought forward as quickly as possible. I particularly wanted to note that the investment fund paper we support the recommendation to extend the Love Our High Streets programme until March 23. Of course, we know that high streets play a pivotal role in driving the vibrancy of our communities, and that's vital to ensuring residents feel pride in the places where they live and work. And we need to ensure that that funding is available to help to recover from the pandemic and to deliver our ambitious wider regeneration plans across the region. I wanted to just note one item in particular that relates to, I suppose, the strategy, both in the region and UK, around how our economy is going to move forwards. We heard recently, both from George Freeman and Rishi Sunak, that actually science, technology and research is at the heart of our economic strategy, and it's the key to driving improvements in productivity and the economy that will serve all of the needs of our residents locally. And I've observed that the funding for the Quantum Technology Centre is under some potential challenge and review, and my reflection and that of the board is that actually that scheme is in quantum technology is a facility of national and global scientific significance, and it is one that I think we need to very carefully consider in the context of our future economy. It has a huge benefit. The government are investing an additional 20 billion in science and technology and R&D, and that leverages about 100 billion over the next few years in additional private sector investment. So we would like the LEP to be involved in the review, and we would like to have the opportunity to shape and inform the decision that is made at a future movement. It is.
Can you give us a signal when you're ready and you think it's okay? Okay.
Right, is that okay? That's clearer. Thank you. So just to the point that with that particular significant investment, the LEP would like to be involved in the review. With regards to the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement, we support the notion to build momentum. It's a fantastic settlement, and we want to ensure that we have a successful execution of the programme that will drive growth and productivity through that significant infrastructure investment. And of course, it connects us all around the region to make sure we can get to the jobs and opportunities that we need. We're very keen that these funds are delivered at pace, and of course, in what's likely to be a very difficult time, that money will impact and land in the economy and make a very significant impact for people accessing those funds to deliver jobs, both in the terms of the delivery of the programme and the implications afterwards. And we also want to just recognise that more widely, the ambitions for significant route connectivity, mass transit, some people might call it, is an important aspect, and to continue to further the support to deliver those long-term investments is really important. It is those long-term investment cycles that lay the foundations for a vibrant economy for the next 20 to 30 years. And as one of our other Metro Mayors recently said, actually, at a conference I attended yesterday with the British Chambers of Commerce, it is important that we and colleagues put place before party, and we hope that colleagues continue to do that here for those benefits as well. Just turn to the BSIP programme and the enhanced partnership schemes. We're delighted that that's being brought forward and coupled with the CRSTS. We know that that creates another exciting opportunity for the region to be ambitious in our approach. And finally, the UK SBS and Multiply programmes. We recognise that we've had a fairly small settlement in the region. However, those funds do give opportunity for moving forwards to create improvements for many communities that are left behind, and those are very important. We know that we have challenges to address, and the LEP board have been engaged in helping to support the prioritisation of those funds, and we continue to support the plans going forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Richard, you were talking about quantum computing and the importance to us nationally and globally when we had the interference. Do you want to add your points to that, because we might have missed that with the feedback?
In recent opportunities, I've had the opportunity to listen to the Science Minister and the Chancellor, both here and in Bristol at the big tent. And science, technology and innovation is the most significant opportunity for us to improve and move to a new economy looking forwards. And we have an asset of global significance in quantum technology through the University of Bristol. And it's a decision, it's a funding decision that is in part supported by the Combined Authority. And we just need to ensure that we very carefully consider the implications or any changes to that funding stream, and we would like the LEP to be involved in assessing the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Appreciate that. Coming next now to item 8, comments from the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We've received written comments from that committee, and copies have been circulated and are available on the website of the Combined Authority alongside the committee agenda papers. Can I ask now Councillor Winston Dogood, the Chair of that committee, to present those comments, please? Thank you, Winston.
Thank you, Chair. Brief comments from us and just observations. First one is on the motion. Some members weren't entirely sure that the Combined Authority could instruct the Avon Pension Fund to have a carbon neutral investment policy, as it was governed by or is governed by a strict set of rules from the financial regulators. The other thing that we're all acutely aware of is, in this ever-changing, fast-changing field, that some of the large fossil fuel companies are some of the biggest and heaviest investors in green energy at the moment. And when do you make the decision that they've crossed the Rubicon? Ørsted is the best example in Europe, where 12 years ago it was mainly getting its income from fossil fuels, and today it's the largest offshore wind company in the North Sea. And so it just begs into question whether a blanket approach is right, or whether one should actually look at each stock individually, because there are certain people far cleverer than myself and others in the room perhaps who are looking at this on a day-by-day, are active investors making sure that, for instance, the likes of BP really are committed to net zero, even though it may be over a platform up to 2050. On the investment fund, there was a little bit of a concern in our committee about local ward councillors not being kept informed regarding schemes in their areas, and one suggestion was about the northern fringe in particular. Also, just general comment, we do worry about inflation. I mean, obviously in every board discussion at the moment is what's happening on inflation, and how is that in the corporate sector being addressed. Same in the public sector, and we're very much aware that the construction inflation is running well ahead of the 9.1% CPI at the moment. And we're not sure how the public sector, and WECA being part of that, is coping with that going forward on some of the projections of projects, etc. And indeed, this year's outturn. The committee particularly welcomed the iStart proposals and the initiative going on in Baines. It looks a very good holistic idea, and we're assured by officers that the best of that will be learnt and exported to other parts of the West of England Combined Authority, and perhaps in other parts of the country. And we did ask, and one of the questions that will be answered going forward is where else in the country is doing it, because certainly that seems to be eminently sensible and some really good outcomes. Just on the investment fund change requests, we noted that there were some requests for reasons for delays in projects, and sometimes the actual reasons were difficult to disentangle. So they asked that role members could take it in challenging and understanding any delays. And I think it's a little bit of a fog at the moment, but there may be more clarity as we go on. CRSTS, there seemed to be this sort of arbitrary figure of 6 million where everything was delegated to the Director of Infrastructure, but he explained that very well and said that really there are two categories of projects, that the major projects are well over the 6 million threshold and the smaller low-hanging fruit are under 6 million, so it made sense for him to have delegated authority on those. And we wanted to make sure that officers were aware that scrutiny was keen to play its part in a constructive way in delivery of these projects and wanted to keep involved and appreciated that capability needed to be built. I think one of the problems we all suffer in the public sector at unitary authority level is that so many departments have been cut back in recent years. And for instance, we're very much aware on CRSTS that it's building back capacity, and we are interested and welcome the contribution that WECA will be making to certain unitary authorities in their fixed costs as they build up. We spend a little bit of time on the bus service improvement plan. I think the background is superb, but we know what the problem is. The market research is great, particularly with passengers. We know what they're looking for, and indeed some of what has already been said in the public statement is very much relevant to what's in the detail in the plans by Councillor Young. What we're waiting for is a detailed action plan of who does what when and when the milestones are, so we can look at those and make sure that we're on track, because there's a lot of work to be done on this. It's still a bit of a fog to the scrutiny committee, the arrangement, accommodation, Metro Mayor, that you and the unitary leaders reached 2 weeks ago at the Guildhall on what we do this financial year. We think that we understand the number that West of England Combined Authority have put into it, just over 1.3 million. But we're not sure it's in the public domain about what the unitary authorities are contributing. So all I'm saying is I'm sure there's no discussions going on behind closed doors that can't be transparent. We'd just like a bit more openness and understanding of what the unitary authorities are contributing in this financial year. We think we're fairly clear on what the West of England Combined Authority is doing. One thing we did find curious, and that is the paper on the EP board and the setup of it, because it seems that there are 4 members, and one of them has 2 votes and the rest has 1 vote, and the person who's got 2 votes is First Bus. So we from a corporate governance point of view, found it a bit odd that North Somerset's got 1 vote, WECA's got 1 vote, First Bus has got 2 votes, and then the 2 other members have got, that makes 5 in all, 5 members, have got 1 vote. So, and it needs a majority of 5 out of 6. So I suspect if we do a little bit of benchmarking, we'll find that other similar boards don't have 2 votes to the likes of First Bus. So we think that needs to be examined and looked at. Doesn't seem right, and doesn't seem right from the fact that probably the major stakeholders are the West of England Combined Authority in North Somerset, rather than the other way round. So we did ask that is just looked at, and the officer assured us that would be. I think on the UK SPF and Multiply, we were underwhelmed by the amount of money until it was explained to us that these are replacements for EU structured funds. So I'm aware from other business interests that means Cornwall will get a big divvy, and the 2 other English regions that were below 75% of EU GVA, I think the analysis was. So it's small beer, but what this is intended to do on a national point of view is look after those regions that have got real economic deprivation. And what we were pleased to hear from the officers was that they noted that 158,000 of our residents in this region rank in the most deprived 5th of places nationally. And they assured us that the little money that we have will be prioritised to that segment of the population. Nothing really to talk about on the Treasury management outturn. Everything straightforward there. So thank you, Metro Mayor.
Thank you very much, Winston. Just quickly, we're awaiting guidance about the voting arrangement. Just to quickly counter that, because when people hear that, they're going to think that's weird, because it is. Okay. Okay, thank you very much indeed, Winston. Really appreciate that, and Richard as well, and everybody else who's contributed so far. Now we come to item 9. I need to ask Kevin and Toby to leave because they've declared an interest in this item. So if they could do that, please. Thank you. Yeah, if you want to do that, that's fine. Is that in order, Stephen? I'm not so up on these things. I think it is going to prove to be academic, but if you wish to give some, I'm happy, Kevin, if you want to say something.
Yeah, just for clarification, so that
Toby, sit down.
Members of the public are aware. I have, obviously, because I'm on the panel, I have regular meetings with the investment manager, and I push this topic on a regular basis. But for your benefit, only 0.07% of the investment fund is with the 5 top oil and gas companies, and overall, only 1.4% of the total investment fund is with fossil fuel companies, which accumulates to 86.6 million, compared to 1.4 billion of investment in sustainable companies that are aligned with the Paris climate emergency. So the investment fund, through pressure from its members already, is pushing along these lines, and is a particularly green investment fund. But I just thought I'd leave you that before you start your debate.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Just wait for them to leave so that we make sure we're fair to them. Okay, so what we have is we have a motion that I am proposing. It was a result of a question that came to one of our prior meetings from the public, so it was instigated by that. Now, I have the motion before me, and I'll read it out for people so that they're aware of what it says, but I think it's going to be academic because I think with 2 members leaving, we're not quorate, so we can't hear it. But let's read it out so people know what we're talking about, the media and various others. So what the motion I'm theoretically proposing, at least, is as follows. In the light of the climate emergency and the West of England's 2030 net zero target, the West of England Combined Authority calls on the Avon pension scheme to match this ambition by committing to have a carbon neutral pension fund by 2030 or earlier, and to divest entirely from fossil fuel stock. So that's the motion. Now, Stephen, could you just inform us about where we're at, because 2 of the 4 Combined Authority members here today have declared an interest and have had to leave.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you are correct. To be quorate, the Mayor and at least and at least 2 other member authorities need to be present. What it does say, for the avoidance of doubt, the meeting shall not be in quorate if this happens because of declarations of interest. However, the meeting will be in quorate for that item, if that makes sense. Yes.
Okay, so
Quorate if what? What was the last, phrase, I missed that.
Sorry, what it's saying is that merely because the 2 members have left, it doesn't render the whole meeting in quorate, but you are in quorate for that item. Yeah.
So therefore, Marvin, because we're in quorate for the item, I can't propose the motion. No one can second it, you couldn't second it if you wish to do so. So therefore, I take it that the item just falls.
It does, sir. There is an opportunity perhaps outside this to explore the possibility, because so many people will potentially have an interest of this nature, to see if there's some way we can get some dispensation for a future meeting.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid at the short notice it's not possible to do so.
Okay, well, we'll explore that for sure, because I'm aware that...
Can we just add something in, though? So we brought a motion, we've had a motion like this at Bristol City Council before anyway. The aim of the motion is to get change, isn't it? It's not just to have a motion so that there's a headline, it's actually to make stuff happen. So maybe what we could do is use this as an opportunity to, not necessarily in this debate, in this meeting, but to really lock down the core principles of the next 20 to 25 years of infrastructure development, economic transition that we're going to be putting in place to decarbonise our system. On one hand, we do want investments to be removed from fossil fuels, although we do need to take heed of what Winston said, is often the world is a lot more complex than Twitter would allow us to engage with. But one thing that we can do, and also I think one of the challenges is how influential we are actually over the pension fund, because it has its own degree of sovereignty. So what we don't want to do is just engage in kind of gesture. But what we can do is look at the way our regional economy works, and by changing the nature of that economy, reduce our demand for fossil fuels. So looking at mass transit, looking at our retrofitting of our homes, all those issues of substance that we've come together to tackle. But then, if we just to check on the conversation, even if we don't have a motion today, have we actually talked to the trustees of the pension? What was their response?
Well, we wrote to them, and they wrote back a very long letter, basically saying that they couldn't do anything, that they had a duty to get a return, which we understand, and that they didn't have the flexibility to make the changes that we were asking for. Now, what I would say, Marvin, is I completely agree with the points you've raised, absolutely right, and we should be doing that in any event, irrespective of today's agenda item. But what I am aware is that other councils have been able to do what this motion is asking. So we perhaps need to explore that and go away now, look at how they've managed to get around this challenge and see if that's something we can do as well. Because while I'm very grateful for Kevin's figures to show that as a proportion it's a tiny amount, it's still a significant sum of money. I think it was 86 million if I've heard it right. And we want to clear that completely, because our net zero target, as you have been telling me for many years too, is so hard to achieve. Everybody's got to be doing their bit, however small, wherever they come from. So perhaps that's what we need to do. So we can talk, obviously you and I will do that in any event, and we'll work out how we can revisit this in a way that has more influence than today's meeting is going to allow.
It sounds like from their response that is the question, isn't it? Is to look at the difference between their statement that they can't actually make change, because what we don't want to do is end up asking people to do stuff if they clearly have no power to do it. That would just be an unwise use of our time and resource. So I maybe what we could do is ask to meet with them, as a group, and actually explore the situation they find themselves in, explore what levers they do have, and where they have barriers to making progress, even that last little bit, as you pointed out, we can then stand with them to take those barriers on and see how we can support them to make the change we want them to make.
And we need to do, I'll call you in a moment, Richard, and we do need to do a bit of work ourselves in addition to that. I think that's a really good idea, Marvin. Not least because I'm aware of other pension funds that are able to give options to their members to say where they want investments to be made. So there's a kind of ethical investments as opposed to other traditional investments. And maybe that's some way we can move forward on this, because perhaps even if the trustees feel they can't move forward, maybe we can give some more choice to the members so that they can decide where their monies are invested. Richard, sorry, I interrupted you.
Thank you. Just to pick up on a point that's been discussed. Is that on? Sorry, thank you. Just to pick up on a point that's been discussed. Obviously, one of the other opportunities that sits before us with regards to the pension fund is that in the government's Levelling Up white paper, there's a recognition that local authority pension funds are not necessarily deployed to invest in place in the way that, Marvin, you've just been talking about. So I completely endorse the idea that we have a wider conversation, that we get ready for the likely changes, and the Chancellor mentioned it again yesterday, that is coming, so that we can pivot to not to subsidise, but to co-invest in the things that are really important to us. So I think that would be my recommendation.
Thank you very much, Richard. Marvin, is there anything else you want to add before we go to the next item and call our colleagues in?
Just to say, we should add that second item in when we meet with them, Dan, to talk about moving their investments away from fossil fuels, taking Winston's warnings into mind, which I think we do absolutely need to take seriously, but also, how we get our pension fund deployed to our local priorities, which are really on the front line of climate change, would be a huge win for us, actually.
Absolutely. So we'll do that, and we'll have a meeting with them, and we'll try and move forward.
I know Eric Pickles took the pension away from people in local government, so I'm not included, neither of you, right? I think
no.
Very nice of him.
No. He's a nice guy. The salad dodger, as he's known. Yeah. Okay, look, can we call the other two members in now? Thank you very much, everybody, for that. I'm sorry that we weren't able to put that to a proper vote today. Okay, thank you very much, Kevin and Toby, for your patience while we dealt with that. We'll fill you in, no doubt, later on about it, and we're going to look at a way that we can move forward despite today's inability to have a vote because we're in quorum. Okay, item 10, please, the investment fund report. This report sets out a series of recommendations to spend or return funding to the investment fund of the Combined Authority. The measure of our success is more than, of course, allocation of money to projects. It is also about actually delivering on them. This report therefore makes recommendations to ensure that where there are delays, that we are able to quickly get things back on track, as discussed in public as well. So can I please ask for a seconder if there is one for this motion, please? Kevin, did you want to speak?
Yes. Are we taking each item individually? Are we, Dan? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm happy to second on the basis of taking each individually. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So, would you like to speak to that now, Kevin, or reserve your judgments? What comments rather?
Thank you.
Okay. Do any other members therefore wish to speak to this item at all, please? Toby, you look like you're coming in. Thank you very, very much indeed. Okay, thanks for your comments. In that case, we will move to separate votes on each recommendation. So, first of all, the first item is that we agree the strategic objectives and investment principles for the investment programme set out in Appendix 2. Does anyone want to speak to that one? It's an individual item. No. Okay. In that case, those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And then number 2, to agree a window until March 2023, i.e. March of next year, for the development and approval of projects seeking to draw on the balance of the Love Our High Streets programme, Land Acquisition Fund and Development Infrastructure Funds. Does anyone wish to speak to that as we're taking things individually? I don't know who's first. I'm going to go with you, Toby, because I think you indicated earlier on you wanted to speak.
That's better.
Fine. Okay. So this is an amended version of a recommendation that we had rejected at a previous committee meeting, but I do welcome the amended nature of this, in that it is providing now a window until next March in order to see if there are other projects that could benefit from these established funding streams. As the committee will know, I did have profound concerns with the original version of this that would have very abruptly brought those programmes to an end. And in the case of the Love Our High Streets programme, that is where the Kingswood Regeneration Scheme originated from. So there are a number of exciting projects up and down the district that have resulted from these funding streams. But I do recognise that there does need to be some form of date by which, if they're not to be fully committed, then the available resource can be released back into the wider programme. So on that basis, I'm prepared to support this recommendation today.
Thank you very much, Toby. Kevin, I understand you want to speak too?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the similar lines, actually, so Love Our High Street Investment Fund, we've had some really good projects that have come forward from Baines, particularly around Twerton, Weston, Moreland Road, etc. So although this is a repetition and a bit of a rewording, I'm happy that this deadline of March is in there, that my officers are happy as well. So let's just make sure we get on and spend the money to regenerate some of our more deprived high streets.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Marvin, did you want to comment? No? Okay, in that case we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That's unanimously carried. Thank you very much indeed. And now we move to 3, to approve the outline business case for iStart and delegate to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the constituent councils. And then this is in a few subparts. So the first subpart is A, the approval of funding for Phase 0 to a value of £1.443 million and for completion by December 2023, subject to the supply of detailed implementation plan for this phase. Does anyone wish to speak to that at all? No? Okay, in that case, those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then moving to Part B, this is the approval of up to £48,000 of additional funding to develop the full business case for Phase 1, subject to review of the successes of Phase 0 outputs in spring 2023. Anyone wish to speak to that? Okay, in that case, those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Then we now move to 4, and this is to approve the outline business case for Chew Valley Lake Recreational Trail, brackets southern section, which is important because we've done the northern section, I think, and the award of £150,000 to develop the full business case by March of next year, 2023. Anyone wish to speak to this? No? Okay, thank you very much. In that case, please show if you're in favour. That's carried unanimously. And then item 5, this is to delegate the approval of the outline business case for the Old City and King Street project, and the award is of £172,000 to develop the full business case for approval this September, and the allocation of £1.655 million for delivery of the scheme to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the constituent councils. Does anyone wish to speak to this? No? In that case, those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. We come to number 6 now, to approve the outline business case for the A38 multimodal corridor and the award of £393,000 from the investment fund to develop the full business case for the Alveston Hill Cycleway by November 2022, and £2.03 million through CRSTS to develop the full business case for the remainder of the corridor by September of next year, 2023, with the allocation of a further £26.752 million of CRSTS money for delivery of the scheme. Does anyone wish to speak to that? Toby?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very pleased to speak in support of this recommendation today for funding to develop these important schemes to full business case, and then to get on and allocate the funding for delivery as well. This is a critical part of the CRSTS programme for South Gloucestershire, to which we as a council have contributed significant resources in order to deliver the improvements that our residents want to see. And this will significantly improve public transport and active modes of travel along the A38, particularly for communities in Thornbury and within the north fringe of Bristol. I'd in particular like to thank the local ward councillors who represent Alveston, Councillor Matthew Riddle and Councillor Keith Birchall, for the way they have championed, in particular, the Alveston Hill Cycleway. Otherwise, Chair, happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Toby, for that. And while we're at it, can I thank the Combined Authority officers and officers from all the unitary authorities for doing so well in the bid for the CRSTS, because without that very successful bid, we would not be able to do many of the things that we're talking about today. Okay, those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Okay, 7, to delegate the approval of the outline business case for the Yates Spur Phases 5 and 6 scheme, the award of £688,000 to develop the full business case for approval in January of next year, 2023, and the allocation of £5.368 million for delivery of the scheme to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Chief Executives of the constituent councils. Does anyone wish to speak to this one? Toby?
Thank you, Chair. Similarly, very pleased to support this recommendation. This project will deliver the final section of the Yates Spur that's been a long-standing aspiration of both the council and the communities along the route, along its route, in order to provide that new and continuous walking and cycling path between Bristol, Bath and Yates. And as we've heard earlier within the public comments section, a project that has got cross-party support on the council. It needs to be remembered that Yates is the third largest settlement within the Wecker area, behind Bristol and Bath, and so improving connections and travel choices to and from Yates is very important. So with that, Chair, very happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Toby. Can all those in favour please show now? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to 8, which is the relating to the outline business case for Bath Quays. Does anyone wish to speak to that? Kevin? No? Okay. In that case, those in favour please show. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And then we come to 9. And this is reference an outline business case for the A432 multimodal corridor. Does anyone wish to speak to that one? Okay. Those in favour please show. Okay. That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. And then item 10 here, or recommendation 10, and this is reference of feasibility and development funding applications for the regional cycle hangars. Would anyone like to speak to this one? No? Okay, in that case, put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then recommendation 11, this is to approve the feasibility and development funding reference Bedminster Works at the A38 and White House Lane. Would anyone like to speak to this one? No? In that case, those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And then recommendation 12, this is a similar feasibility and development funding application for the Bristol to Hengrove Metro Bus Extension Corridor. Would anyone like to speak about this one? No? Okay, those in favour please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. And then recommendation 13, to approve the feasibility again and development funding application for the Bath Creative Quarter project. Would anyone like to speak to this one? Kevin, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very briefly, this is extremely important for the City of Bath, the regeneration of an area which is fundamental to independent shops and independent traders, which I'm sure we can all get round and support. So I'll be fully supporting this motion, and I hope everybody else will as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that brevity there. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. And then recommendation 14, this is about deferring the decision on the North Fringe infrastructure package until the meeting in September in order for this project to be considered as part of the work to establish the regional investment priorities. Does anyone wish to speak to this one, please? Toby.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I do have some comments to make on this recommendation. And once I've done that, I would be proposing an amendment to that recommendation. So the North Fringe infrastructure package is a regionally significant scheme that will help to facilitate the opening of the Brabazon Arena. That in turn is part of a much wider mixed-use development of several thousand homes, jobs and infrastructure within the area that very much straddles the Bristol and South Gloucestershire border. There is important technical work that does need to continue at pace because timescales are very tight. So I would be looking and will be proposing some wording that does allow us to continue with the business case process and then permits then an allocation decision on the delivery of the scheme to be taken at the September committee meeting. That funding in the interim period will just allow that really important technical work to continue so we stand the best possible chance of delivering this on time.
Okay, well look, thank you for that, Toby. I mean, I'm just so you know, I've asked some questions about this, not because I'm against it as a project, I'm very much for it for a project, but I am like you, Toby, very concerned about value for money and wondering why we're putting in money and maybe not the developer too. And so I kind of wonder if you could perhaps tell me a little bit about that. Bristol City have provided a very helpful letter today, this morning, explaining some of that, but I wonder if you could comment on that as well, because that's what I'm concerned about, just knowing why we're being asked for this money and the importance of that, and is it value for money, very importantly.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm afraid I'm not cited on the correspondence that has been exchanged between you and committee colleagues today, or whenever that was. In terms of the obligations that are on the developer, that was set out when planning consent was granted for the developments. That is in the public domain. I don't have that information to hand, but it is, as I said, out there and would have been part of the planning consent. And there is a significant contribution from the developer to this. But as with so many of our infrastructure projects, we know that contributions from developers only go so far, and that there is a need for the public sector to contribute to that. Now, as I've said, I think the allocation decision for this can rightly be taken in September. But in terms of the funding to continue the technical work that enables us to take that value for money decision in September, it is important that we have that funding approved today to be able to continue with that valuable work.
Okay, thank you, Toby. And just to be clear, as far as you're concerned, it's value for money, yes? Okay, thank you. Marvin, I think you want to speak.
Well, I'll see where we are with the amendment, but I too, we know just how important the development is up on the North Fringe, the homes, the arena, everything that goes with it. And having been through years of negotiation, both with us and with the combined authority over how we get this development done, while we have so much momentum, there's a real concern that if we were to delay, we may begin to feed a delay into that scheme, with everything that scheme is going to mean for our regional economy, both in terms of jobs, supply chain, but also something that's going to be a huge export for us. So I'm keen to hear the amendment, but I just think we're in an era, aren't we, where we need to get stuff done. We need to get it done, good value for money, but we also miss out if we engage in unnecessary delays. Costs continue to go up. We postpone the economic benefit that will come from schemes. So we really need to avoid that.
Thank you very much indeed, Marvin. Toby.
Would it be helpful at this point, Chair, if I introduce the wording of a new recommendation? So it would be as follows: to approve the award of £400,000 to the development of the full business case for the North Fringe infrastructure package, with the allocation of full capital funding being deferred to September for decision as part of our strategic priorities. And that's what I'm proposing.
Okay, well, I'm happy to second that, Toby, if that helps everybody. So in that case, can I put that to the vote? Is that new proposal accepted? Okay, everybody, that's unanimous. Okay, in that case, that becomes the motion now. So can I ask those in favour of that motion to please show now? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we now move to recommendation 15 to amend the approved capital programme for individual project approvals agreed at the April committee and within this report. Does anyone wish to speak to that one? No? Okay, those in favour please show. Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Then recommendation 16, to agree the delivery assurance and budgetary principles and terms of reference for the Programme Review Board as set out in Appendix 3 and 4. I'd be surprised if anyone wants to speak on this, but if you do, indicate now. No, in that case, please show if you're in favour. Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. And then recommendation 17, to request officers to review the existing programme given the significant impact of inflation and the economic position on projects, and report back to the September, that's this year of course, committee on any implications. Anyone wish to speak to that one? Sorry, Marvin.
Thanks, Dan. I just want to just emphasise, not a technical point, but to make sure that that conversation involves all the officers as well. So it's not just in the combined authority team, but there's a real strong intent and engagement with the unitary authority officers. So we make sure we're drawing on all the expertise available.
No, that makes complete sense, of course. Sorry, Marvin, did you want to come back in? No. Okay. In that case, anyone else wish to speak? No. Okay. In that case, all those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you for your patience as we went through those sort of detailed recommendations, everybody.
Dan, sorry, can I just make one other point on the overall paper? Which, I thought I would wait to the end, but I probably could have done it at the beginning.
Yeah, come in now. Yeah. Hang on, let me turn off so they can hear you.
Thank you. So, in line with what we spoke about with the pension fund motion about really setting out some principles that will guide us over the coming years, things that will transcend any electoral cycle and the coming and going of elected politicians. One is, I think we should do that, but I think there are some anchor programs of work that we would like to see much more explicit reference to. Now we can go through the ups and downs of that in that discussion, but I think mass transit is an essential part of any modern expanding urban area with more people. Flood defence. We are due the 100 years flood at some point, and we are all, as authorities, on the front line of that flood risk. Not only does it stop harm, but it actually brings more land back into play. And when I think about the housing pressures on the neighbours, we in Bristol want to build more homes in the middle of the city. That land can be brought back into use by that investment in flooding. And also, actually support for things like Western Harbour, for example, housing development, 2,000 homes in the middle of the city. Our feeling is just that in this latest paper, some of the past commitments or mentionings of those kind of schemes has got a lot lighter as we've come in here. And I think, if anything, as we go through time, our commitments and our intent around what we intend to do should be getting stronger, not lighter. It feels like it might be going slightly in the wrong direction. So we're going more high level. So maybe it's something we can all talk about as we really begin to lock down why we are coming together and what we're intending to get done.
Okay, thanks, Marvin. And of course, we particularly here, Marvin and I, have talked about these things quite a lot, but I think that's right. I think we do need to talk about these things. Okay, thank you very much, Marvin. Appreciate that. Okay, let's move now to item 11, the investment fund change requests. Now, this report sets out requests for changes to already agreed projects in the investment fund, and I'd now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I please call for a seconder? Is there any? Okay, thank you, Kevin. Okay, do you wish to speak on that item now, Kevin? Let me turn.
Yeah, very briefly, thank you, Chair. This is around the Milson Quarter Master Plan. This is a fundamental regeneration of the centre of Bath, as we've spoken about before. I'm really quite excited about this. But it also includes the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone, which is key for this particular area. We need to make sure we get that programme right. We need to make sure we get the infrastructure right, the transport around that right, make sure it's sustainable, make sure there's green businesses that are attracted to the area. So yeah, I'm very keen to second this motion and make sure we get that funding through for the Summer Valley Enterprise Zone in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to this item? Marvin? Yes, Marvin.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. So maybe I'll just come off the back of some of Rich's points earlier on QTIC. With the university, in just how just how important this investment has become, especially in light of the fact that we were together, weren't we, when we hosted Jim O'Neill just a couple of weeks ago at Temple Quarter after we secured the near £95 million for Temple Meads and all that means for the opening up of Temple Quarter. So I just think that in terms of mood music, while we're all moving with the momentum around that huge opportunity that is Temple Quarter, we need to make sure that we're making the right noises as we've asked national government to make the right noise. But I won't lay it out because I'm sure Rich has laid out just how significant QTIC is, both in terms of contribution to our economy, but also our regional reputation both in Europe and around the rest of the world, at a time when we need that reputation to be high, to be drawing that inward investment and everything else that goes with strengthening our economy.
Thank you very much, Marvin. And I think we probably all agree on the importance of quantum computing and associated activities and research and all the rest of it and endeavours. And I suspect this is probably going to be a bigger thing than even the internet. So it's very important that our region is forefront. That includes actually not just Bristol University, but Bath University, where they do amazing programming on exactly these things. And as people are probably aware, the three main places in the world, pretty much, I think I'm right in saying, are America, not surprisingly, us for the UK, although there are places in other parts of the country where they do important stuff in the UK, and would you believe it, China, where a lot of Bristol graduates were trained, who had come from China and gone back and are now doing things there. But it's very important for not just wealth creation and new technology and all the rest of it, but actually our security, because these computers, when they work and are actually made, are phenomenal. They do billions of calculations a second. None of our bank accounts would be safe with that kind of computing power, so there is a security component to this as well. So it is very, very important. But what I would say is that everybody who gets money from the combined authority or unitary authorities does have to make sure that they are accountable for that money, they use that money well, and if there are delays or alterations, they need to explain it, not just assume that that money is given to them and no one will keep an eye on it. We do have to have a culture where we're keeping on top of things, and if projects have merit, we will always support them by agreement in this room and elsewhere. But what we can't do is just say, over to you, and you never report back to us. So it is really, really important, and we'll revisit QTIC, I'm sure, in the future. But thank you, Marvin, because you've made some important points, and Kevin too. Okay, in that case, I'll move to the voting. If I can press the button right. Those in favour, please show now. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we're moving now to item 12. This is the City Regional Sustainable Transport Settlement Delivery Model. And as you know, and was referred to in earlier comments, we've done very well in securing the biggest per head transport funding settlement in the country, in England. Getting the money in is great, but now we have to deliver, a point Marvin has just made. This report sets out delivery for the City Regional Sustainable Transport Programme, and I would now like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Is there a seconder, please, for this? Okay, thank you, Toby. Would you like to speak, Toby?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would. So, overall, very much welcome the report. As you've said, we have done well as a region to secure this funding, and I think is another part of the evidence that vindicates our decision as a region to create the combined authority in the first place, and to see that the government is continuing to prioritise combined authority areas for funding, and of course recognising the very significant local contributions that each of the councils have made to the overall programme, and particularly in South Gloucestershire to see, and indeed reflected in earlier reports before us today, significant investment in a number of our transport corridors, including those from the north fringe of Bristol up to Thornbury, and the same up to Yate and Chipping Sodbury as well. I will also just make some comments in that I think that in terms of the delegations, I think that it would be more appropriate to delegate to chief executives as opposed to infrastructure directors. I think just recognising the sums of money involved here, but we'll committee colleagues may well have comments to make on that as well.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Would anyone else like to come in on this one? Kevin?
Yeah, but very briefly, Dan, I agree with Toby on this one. I think because of the sums of money that are involved, I'm happy to support changes to 5, 6, 7 and 8, that the combined authority chief executives and the chief executives of the constituent councils are the people making the decisions rather than the directors. Yeah, so more than that.
Okay, Marvin, do you want to speak?
I'd be in the same place with that, Dan. I think it should, the delegation to chief execs working together. I might also suggest actually that we look at the A4 Bath Road, certainly a road of huge significance for us in Bristol, and bringing that back into the mass transit scheme. I think it opens up the possibilities of a more radical solution for us.
Okay, thanks very much, Marvin. Well, you won't be surprised to hear that I don't agree with that. I think the Director of Infrastructure is a very high-skilled and well-paid job. It's a very senior-level job. So let's put that to the vote in that case. Those in favour, please show. Sorry, let me just see. Let me just go through. This is the item that we're just going on now. So it's the item 12 recommendation. Sorry,
Talking about the delegation.
Apologies, I'm going mad here. So, right, hold on, bear with me, just let me catch up. Right, this is number 1, so let's go for number 1. Apologies. Okay, recommendation 1, so I'll read that out so people know. Recommendation to approve the delivery model principles to develop for the CRSTS programme as set out in section 3.3 of the report. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Right, sorry for that confusion. Let's go on to recommendation 2 because we're taking them individually, as you pointed out, Kevin. Recommendation 2. This recommendation is to progress the procurement of a strategic programme delivery partner in conjunction with a broad review of the combined authority organisational structure as set out in section 3.3 of the report. Okay, all those in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously, thank you. Then we come to recommendation 3. Please bear with me. This recommendation is to approve the pipeline and over-programming list as set out in table 2 for the CRSTS programme. So, okay, all those in favour of that, please show now. Thank you very much. That is carried unanimously. And now we come to recommendation 4. This recommendation is to allocate £450,000 for financial year 23-24 and £450,000 for the financial year 24-25 from the CRSTS Capacity Fund, in brackets revenue, for continued capacity building within the unitary authorities. In other words, £150,000 each for each of the unitary authorities. Those in favour of that, please show. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And then we're coming to the delegation recommendations. This is recommendation 5. This is a recommendation to delegate the responsibility for the Maintenance Challenge Fund of £32 million and Non-Highway Maintenance Fund of £1 million to the Director of Infrastructure of the Combined Authority in consultation with the other Directors of Infrastructure. Okay, do you need a bit of time to chat, Toby, before we vote? Okay, in that case, those who are in favour of this, please show.
Well,
do you want to speak to it?
I just want to confirm what it is that we are voting on here. So in terms of the alternative wording that delegates to the chief executives, is that what we are voting on now in terms of the amended wording?
Okay, right, so in that case, the recommendation is as it stands with the current wording, unless we all agree now that it changed, which I don't, but you can put forward a proposal that changes it, and someone can propose it, second it, and then it becomes the main motion, and then we vote on it. So do you want to put forward some alternative words, Toby?
Well, thank you, Chair. So I think the alternative words that we would be wanting to see is, in effect, substituting the words Director of Infrastructure in consultation with the other Directors of Infrastructure to be replaced with the Chief Executive of the Combined Authority in consultation with the Chief Executives of the councils. And that is reflective of the as I said, the sums of money that we are dealing with here. So that is the amendment that I'm proposing.
Okay, so that's been proposed. Is that seconded, please? Okay, thanks, Marvin, for seconding that. Okay, can we put that to the vote? Is those in favour of that new amendment put forward? Hands up. Okay, that's carried then. So that becomes the main. And I'm voting against. Sorry, and that's carried. And now we have to vote on the main motion as amended. So those in favour of that, please show now. Okay, and those against. Okay, so that's carried. Okay, it's not carried because it needs unanimity. Is that right, Stephen?
Your current practice, as I understand it,
okay, let me take mine off so people can hear.
As I understand it, the established principle and practice has been that for any majority to be effective, it includes the mayor. So if you don't vote in favour of it, the established practice here has been that the principle falls.
Okay, so that one falls, Stephen, just to be clear. So we have to move on to the next recommendation. Yeah?
No, sorry, to complicate this, you go back to the original motion and you vote on that as to whether or not unamended you now wish to support it.
Okay, all right.
In the event that that falls, then I think you're in the position that no officers have delegated authority and any decision on spend will have to come back to a future meeting of this committee, essentially.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, can I have a short adjournment, because I think we need to have a little chat, because we need to think about this and have a little conversation. So how long will we need to adjourn for, do you think? Anybody? How long? Toby?
I don't think for very long, Chair, provided that perhaps the Interim Director of Investment and Corporate Services could provide us some advice around the level of strategic oversight that the Chief Executives would have along with this delegation to infrastructure directors. I think it is that Chief Executive involvement that is our principal concern as unitary authority. So I don't think the adjournment needs to be for long.
Okay, so if I suggest up to 10 minutes, and then if we need longer, you don't even think that? 5? Let's do 5. If you're in agreement, it's just we say 5 and it ends up being more longer. Okay, so let's do 5 and see how we get on.
If I may be so bold, Chair, to suggest perhaps if Richard doesn't mind, he could sort of provide some commentary now around that issue, because it may be that we're able to resolve this without even having an adjournment.
Okay, if that's okay, I'm happy about that. That's fine by me. Okay, Richard, off you go.
Thanks, Chair. Look, absolutely, you would expect the CEOs to have oversight, strategic oversight of the programme, even with that delegation. So, I'm confident that we will take reports through the very effective, very useful CEO meetings that we have, if that provides assurance on to the original motion.
Okay, thank you, Richard. So we'll adjourn now for 5 minutes and let people have a chat. So if people want a comfort break, please take one. Okay, thank you, everybody. The meeting's now back with you. Thanks for your understanding. It is a bit technical, as these things sometimes are, so let's see what we can do. So what's happened is, for members of the public and those watching online, we've agreed a new wording which replaces each instance where it talks about being delegated to the Director of Infrastructure. And what we'll do, I'm going to get Richard Bonner in a moment to read out the new wording that we've agreed. But what we'll do is... Oh, sorry, Richard. Sorry, it was Richard Ennis. No wonder Richard Bonner looked at me that way. So, Richard, you're going to read that out, and what we'll do is, gentlemen, we'll deal with this as items or recommendations 5 through 8 inclusive, and do them all in one go, if that's okay, rather than and then the craziness of going through it each time. So, Richard Ennis, please tell us what the wording we've agreed is, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the new wording, and I'll read it out in full, is to delegate the responsibility for the Maintenance Challenge Fund, open brackets 32 million, close brackets, and Non-Highway Maintenance Fund, open brackets 1 million, close brackets, to the to the Director of Infrastructure of the Combined Authority in consultation with the Directors of Infrastructure of the Unitary Authorities. In the absence of unanimous agreement, the delegation reverts to the Combined Authority Chief Executive in consultation with the Unitary Authority Chief Executives, full stop. There will be regular reporting on CRSTS as a standing item on the Chief Executive Officer's meetings.
Thanks very much indeed. In that case, can I put the following then? Can we all vote on recommendations 5, 6, 7 and 8 inclusive with that new wording to apply where it needs to be changed, please? So does anybody wish to speak to those in any way? No? Good. I'm glad to hear that. So those in favour, please show. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very, very much. Thank you for your patience, everybody, while we got that sorted. So we're now on item 13, the Bus Service Improvement Plan and Enhanced Partnership Scheme. And we've got Stephen Bridger, who is, I will introduce properly when we come to the joint committee, but Steve Bridger is the new leader of North Somerset Council. And because the Bus Service Improvement Plan relates specifically to North Somerset, Steve has asked if he could say a few words to the meeting. Is that okay with the other leaders, please? Is that all right? Steve, the floor's yours.
That works. This is making my intervention perhaps more important than it actually is. So just a few brief words. So thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Chair, for allowing me to say a few words before you have the formal debate. I wanted to first of all actually put on record my thanks to the officers, my officers at North Somerset Council and their counterparts at WECA. A lot of work has gone into this, not least the bids which as we know, were incredibly successful. So thank you to the officers for getting us this far. We brought a sister paper, if I can call it that, to our executive last week around BSIP, which is, I think, entirely aligned to the paper in front of you this afternoon. Broadly about the direction of travel, but it included some delegations on the detail and on the spend profile. I think it's worth mentioning that the detail that sits below all of that is still being worked up, by officers, and I would expect this to be considered and reviewed by all partners to ensure agreement and to ensure the approach is one that's jointly owned by all of us. The discussions, the current discussions are recognising, I think, that the steer we're getting from ministers is that we need to focus more on fare reduction to increase patronage as opposed to, at least initially, expanding routes, particularly given that we've still got this really difficult situation around driver capacity with the operators. And not least, of course, the national cost of living crisis. Just a further observation, really. I think it's critical that the city region works together on this to preserve a core network of bus services with the operators, which we can build on, as the situation around driver resource becomes hopefully more positive and stabilises. I think any services registered in October this year will need to be sustainable. They need to be sustainable and 100% reliable, because I think confidence from our residents, from passengers, has been eroded quite a lot, and we need to encourage them onto buses and hopefully discourage some of them, those are able to anyway out of their cars. So I think that will mean, that we need to acknowledge that some services may need to reduce or change, at least in the short term, to allow some growth and stability back into the network on the back of a really strong fare offer. Chair, I think that's all I wanted just to say. So thank you again for listening.
Thank you very much, Steve. That's really helpful. Appreciate that. And thank you for the kind comments about the Combined Authority officers. Your officers did an amazing job too. And it's also the case with CRSTS that the unitary authorities played their part in us getting that large sum of money as well with the Combined Authority officers. So we've done a great job. And sometimes I know that the media report that there are disagreements, conversations, arguments, what have you. But I tell you something, it's great to have arguments when you've got that kind of money. It's a lovely problem. So let's keep it up. Okay, thank you very much. All right, so let's move on. As you know, we've received the second highest funding nationwide for this BSIP fund. And now we have to move to delivery. So I'd like to move the recommendations as set out in the report. Can I ask for a seconder, please? Kevin, would you like to speak?
Yep, thank you, Dan. More than happy to second, and I think we've just discussed with the previous item, but item number 2 here should also have the exact same wording as we've just covered for item 12.
Delegations.
Yes, the delegations one.
It's 2 and 3.
2 and 4. Sorry, yep, 2, 3 and 4, you're right, I hadn't carried on. Right, yep.
Sorry, thank you, Kevin. I'm not on the microphone. Can I just check, is that, let's do that now. Is everybody agreed that we change the wording as appropriately as agreed before to apply to those particular recommendations as just mentioned? Okay, great. Kevin, got your hand up. Yeah, so that's unanimously carried that we do that. Okay. Okay, does anybody wish to speak to this item other than Kevin having seconded it? Toby? Marvin, your hand's up.
Yeah, Dan, it's just around this item and the scale of our ambition with bus travel. We've been supporting for some time and had a talk with First Bus as well about how we can get to a point where we provide free bus travel for apprentices and students aged 18 to 25. Now, we'd love to go a lot further, but as a friend said to me, you can't boil the ocean. I think this is a group of people we could make an explicit commitment to. What I'm not saying is that we could do it all tomorrow, but certainly having an explicit commitment to free travel for 18 to 25-year-olds, students and apprentices, and then making sure that we are going in that direction, I think would be a very good thing to do. And when we think about the disproportionate impact of COVID, the lockdown, and now this cost of living crisis, as we go, is having on our young people. We know about their mental health consequences, their exclusion from the economy. I think this could be incredibly significant. Now, I recognise that there are other demands on our bus services, and I know that Toby and Kevin have particular challenges with rural routes as well. So I don't underestimate the scale of demand and how much we would want. But from where I am in Bristol, when I think about places like Hartcliffe to Avonmouth to Lance Weston, Southmead, and our need to include people in Bristol's life, this would be a really important component part. Now we'll do we're going to continue doing the work on this in the council, but this is something that can't be done without the Combined Authority and First, and your participation in making that commitment and taking that challenge on would be very welcome.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Marvin. I can't give a commitment to that now in its entirety, and in fairness, you did say you weren't expecting it tomorrow, because the challenge, of course, is about getting bus passenger numbers up across all age groups and all backgrounds and all cultures and all communities. But I am very, very sympathetic to that, and it would be very lovely to be able to do that. What I did give is a commitment on Radio Bristol this morning about trying to bid for more money from the government specifically for this particular age group in the way that you're describing, Marvin. And I give that undertaking again today to say that at the first possible opportunity, I was certainly bidding to get more money specifically for that group of people. But we do need to think more widely and broadly. But I'm very happy to keep having that discussion. You're clearly going to be driving this forward, Marvin. I think that's right that you do so, because I think it's important we have these discussions, because we don't have easy decisions. Whenever we make any decision when it comes to public transport, it's always about what priorities do you give. And it's tough, because one priority it always puts something else down in the process. So we've got to work and find a way through. Okay, thank you. On that basis, Can I therefore then take, we've been seconded, yes, can I put that therefore, all those recommendations with the wording as amended, as agreed just now, can I ask you to show if you're in favour of that, please? Thank you very much. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we now come to...
Chair, sorry,
Toby.
Yeah,
yes, Toby.
Sorry, if I may, just to make a comment at the end of that item. Yeah. Obviously, this links with obviously all the other funding streams that we have to be able to support bus services, and we did at our last extraordinary meeting agree that we needed to have a governance and media protocol that looked at all of the funding in totality to make sure that we're joined up and not approaching approaching it in piecemeal. It's a piece of work that I'm not sure where that sits and where that has gone, but just to reiterate the importance of making sure that we can bring some transparency and collective understanding about how we will use all of the different funding pots at our disposal as both combined authority and unitary authorities to make sure that we can have a reliable and affordable bus network.
Well, the point is the Western England isn't uniform. There are different places and communities, all as important, but with different challenges and different needs. So I'll certainly follow that up, Toby, and we need to work on getting passenger numbers up, however we have to do it, wherever we are in the West of England, and in each of the unitary authorities, of course. Okay, so I think am I right that we've dealt with that because you came in last, Toby? Okay, so we'll now move on in that case to item 14, the Shared Prosperity Fund and UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Multiply. So this is about boosting adult numeracy skills and helping people to get the training they need to progress in work. The focus proposed for investment will play a role in helping our communities deal with the cost of living crisis, which we're all acutely aware of, and very hard and tough it is for many of our communities, if not all of us in some way or other. I would now like to move the recommendation as set out in the report. Can I please ask for a call for a seconder? Is there a seconder? Thank you, Toby. Would you like to speak to this?
Happy to support it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Toby. Do any other members wish to speak to this item? Marvin?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I just that we make a commitment to making sure that as much of this money is pushed, well, basically that the money is pushed straight to the UAs. What we just want to do is make sure that we minimise any temptation or behaviours that would top slice and tight and remove this money and spend it on bureaucracy rather than getting it to the front line to get spent. I think that's incredibly important.
Okay, thank you very much, Marvin. So, based on that recommendation, I won't read out the whole recommendation if you don't mind. Can all those in favour please show now? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much indeed. Item 15, the West of England Combined Authority and Mayoral Budget Outturn Report. This report asks the committee to note the latest revenue budget outturn report for 21-22 and requests an approval of reserves to the general fund. I would now like to move the recommendation as set out in the report. Is there a seconder, please? No. Toby?
Thank you, Chair. So happy to second overall, but I do have an amendment to put forward in relation to recommendation 3 and 5. So just wanted to draw that to your attention.
Just so I'm clear that you are happy basically to support all the recommendations except 3 and 5, and you have an amendment, is that right? Okay, is it one amendment that relates to each one, or sorry, both of them, or are they individual ones? Both, okay. In that case, would you like to put that forward, and then we can get, you're proposing it, and then we can see if there's a seconder.
Thank you, Chair. So at the moment, the recommendations are proposing to allocate surpluses into either the Treasury Management earmarked reserve or the general reserve. And my amendment seeks to approve the allocation of both sums. So I'll read out in full. So it is to approve the allocation of £699,000 from the 2021-22 Treasury Management surplus and £87,000 from the 21-22 net revenue surplus to the Integrated Transport Authority specific one-off bus earmarked reserve to invest in further support to regional bus services to protect routes, particularly in rural areas and other communities not well served by public transport. So that's the amendment that I'm proposing. And to make some comments around this, I think this very much links back to not just a comment that I've made on a number of occasions at recent committee meetings, but at the extraordinary meeting that we recently had around bus services, around WECA needing to strain every sinew to protect bus services. And I think where there are available funds, to put them to, I think, the priorities that local people would want to see us adopt. And I think this is very much in line with what I'd understood to be the agreement that we reached collectively as part of that previous extraordinary meeting, that underspends and surpluses and the like would be put towards, first and foremost, that issue of how can we protect bus services as we move through the autumn and leading up to the next financial year.
Okay, thanks, Toby. So have you got a form of words in writing for us? Yeah, so can I have that, if that's okay? And then would you mind if I adjourned for a short adjournment so I can talk to my officer, just check what the implications of that as an expert giving me some advice. So we'll just have a short adjournment, I hope, while we do that. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks again for your patience. Right, now, Toby, thank you for putting forward that amendment and putting it in writing so I could have a look at it and talk to my officers about it. That's really helpful indeed. Having said that, I don't support the amendments that you've put forward, and I'm going to ask Richard Ennis to explain that, because I think it is quite important that people understand why I'm doing that. Okay, Richard, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, I mean, it's worth just saying it in quite succinctly, really. You know, there is already a committee agreed reserves policy that we do set out in the paper that means that we ought to be getting to a reserves figure at 5% of circa 2.8 million, and we are marginally over 2 million, 2.063. So we are short of the committee's policy in terms of the figure that it wants to get to. It is, and in my view, therefore, this is not a prudent thing to do with the reserves that we are trying to build to a better place. Thirdly, it's worth saying that we are in, as we already know, very difficult times economically and from an inflation perspective and so on. And the only certainty at the moment we have is uncertainty. And therefore, the economy, and given the volatility that we have, again, adds to that need to make sure we get to a reasonable level and a committee-agreed level of reserves as well. So, I don't recommend that the committee agree this.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. Well, that's very strong advice to me, as people can hear. Toby, I don't know if you want to consider withdrawing your amendment or whether you want to see if someone will second it.
Thank you, Chair. So I have listened to the comments of the Interim Director of Investment and Corporate Services. I do understand the point about our policy on reserves. I would just say that we did agree at our previous extraordinary meeting that we would leave no stone unturned as we sought to provide the maximum possible resource to be able to support our bus network in the face of very significant challenges that we are all aware of. And just shy of £700,000 would provide a great deal of reassurance and resilience to the bus network. And so I think it's about choices at the end of the day, and I'm making my choice about what I think is the priority for spare funds. So I'm not minded to withdraw my amendment.
Okay, thank you, Toby. Well, just to say that all the bus reserve money is being spent on buses, so that is the position. So look, let's see if there's a seconder for your amendment. Is there anyone seconding that? Okay, Kevin, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. More than happy to support this. And it seems quite bizarre how we had the extraordinary meeting not too long ago where we worked really hard together to find funding for buses. And now we're having WECA officers and yourself say, what we'll do, we'll put £700,000 into reserve pot for a rainy day. Well, we've got real issues today, particularly with rural connectivity with buses. So if we're going to have a debate in a few months' time about buses that are at risk, and yet WECA are sitting on literally millions of pounds worth of money in your reserve pots, I don't think that's appropriate. You're making a clear decision here to put money into your reserves and not put money into buses, and I would find that extremely disappointing, Dan.
Okay, well look, we are using all the bus reserve money for buses. The other money is for things like skills and the other areas of responsibility that I have in the Combined Authority. So look, it's been proposed, it's been seconded. Let's put it to the vote in that case. Marvin, did you want to speak? Sorry, I thought you were indicating. Okay, in that case, can we have a vote, please? Those in favour, please show. Okay, those against, so that is lost. In that case, we go back to the original resolution. Those in favour of that, please show in its entirety, all the points 1 through 4 and 5. Please. Shall I do it in bits, you think? All right, let's do it in bits then in that case. Let's go to item 1 then. That's to note the mayoral fund forecasted revenue outturn as detailed in Appendix 1. That's a noting item, so I assume that's noted. Is that so, guys? Okay, thank you. And then number 2, notes the Combined Authority forecast revenue outturn as detailed in Appendix 2. That again is a noted item, so I assume that's noted. Is that the case? The same with 3. Is that please noted? That's the allocation of 699 from the Treasury Management surplus that Toby has been talking about. No, okay, that's not noted. All right, and then 4 notes the transfer of 1.347 million being part of the net end-of-year surplus in integrated transport activities to an integrated transport authority specific one-off bus earmark reserve to invest in further support to regional bus services to protect routes, particularly in rural areas and other communities not well served by the public transport during 2022-23 as agreed at the January 22 committee. Is that noted, please? Thank you very much. I'm sorry it was so long. And then we now need to vote on recommendation 5. This is to approve the transfer of £87,000 from the 2021-22 net revenue surplus to the West of England Combined Authority General Reserve. Can those in favour please show now? Okay, so it's just me. And those who are against, please show now. And any abstentions? Okay, 3 abstentions. Okay, so that's carried then. Okay. Thank you very much. Is that it? Have I done that? Okay, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody in the public. It must sound like madness to you. I do apologise for that. It is local government at its best, I'm afraid, or its worst, depending how you look at it. Okay, let's move to item 16 then.
I think that can I just make a point on it?
Of course, Marvin.
As I think it is, I think it is a point worth making. We did have a practice before of meeting in between meetings just to iron some of these things out so that people wouldn't be subject to local government at its best, and we dropped that practice. I think maybe, Dan, just having experienced here and and thinking about that and thinking about our audience in the future, maybe we should reinstate that so we could iron out some of these things beforehand.
Well, look, Marvin, thank you for that. You know I don't agree with that, because I believe we should try and do things as openly, boring as it might be, so that people understand things. So we can talk about that. There are some cases where it clearly makes sense, but I think we would do it far too often. And what I worry about, if I may finish, what I worry about is that we do a lot of talking and not a lot of deciding. And we are all agreed, I think, in this room that we need to get on with deliveries. That means making decisions, and we've done well today. So I want to be, praising people up for that. But I also don't want to fall back into discussions where we talk all the time and don't do. Our economy, everything else in the country is under huge pressure at the moment, and we need to do the best by our communities. And I know you all agree that as leaders as well. So let's have discussions about how we might have a dialogue. But look, you know my view.
So Dan, if I can just say on that point, just two things. Absolutely, and that's why we've been so concerned about some of the delays that were listed in today's paper, so that we actually get stuff done. And I think we have developed a reputation for building that momentum over the last few years. And we need to keep it up. Temple Quarter not being leased, housing delivery. Again, I mean, it's one of the reasons I have been so concerned about the mass transit consultation that was supposed to be out in January, and we're now approaching July, and that has not gone public. So we don't want the delays. We want stuff done. But if I can just say, just on the point of tone, if we are going to do this stuff in public, then let's not be disparaging about it. Let's celebrate it and not kind of make points that kind of put it down. If we're going to do it in public, let's celebrate the fact that we do it in public and it takes a bit longer, and not kind of make suggestions that let's all have a laugh at it, because it's not a good use of time. It's just a small thing about the way people engage with local politics. I think we need to be consistent on.
Okay, well, look, thank you, Marvin. People will have heard your views and seen it online as well, and they'll have heard my views. And look, I think we're doing well today, so let's keep it in that place. Okay, thank you. Item 16 now, the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 2021-22. I'd now like to move the recommendation as set out in the report. Please, can I call for a seconder? Is there someone to second this? Kevin and Toby, thank you very much indeed. Does anybody rather wish to speak to this? No? Okay, thank you for that. There's no vote required because the recommendations are for noting. So those are noted. Yes, please, gentlemen, is that right? They're all noted. Okay, in that case, that concludes our business for this meeting today. We're going to move on to another meeting. We're going to have a short break for about 10 minutes. Thank you to everyone who's attended and contributed today. Really appreciate it, and thank you for your patience and understanding, because it is sometimes quite difficult to work out. Thank you.